He saw it from the road. Frank Gable had driven this stretch of Highway 34 outside Millhaven, Kentucky for 51 years. He knew every curve, every tree line, every fence post. He could drive it half asleep and probably had, coming home from town in the dark after a long day. So he saw it immediately, the for sale sign, planted in the ground at the end of his own driveway, white and red, a real estate company's name he didn't recognize, a phone number he had never been given. He pulled over and sat in his truck for a long time. Frank was 78 years old. His wife Della had been in the ground for 11 weeks. He had spent those 11 weeks doing what men like him do, getting up every morning, feeding the animals, working the fields, existing by routine because routine was the only thing that didn't require him to feel anything. He had told his son Brian and his daughter Patrice that he was fine. He had not been fine, but he had said it so convincingly that apparently they had moved on to other concerns. Concerns like property values and real estate markets, and what to do with an old farm that an old man was rattling around in alone. He got out of the truck, walked to the sign, read it once, read it again, then pulled it out of the ground with both hands, his grip still strong. 50 years of farm work didn't leave you, and carried it to the bed of his truck and drove up to the house. Nobody had called him. Nobody had asked. He sat on the porch and looked out at his land, 112 acres, the same land his father had started and Frank had spent his life expanding and improving, and felt something harden in his chest that had nothing to do with grief. Frank Gable's father had left him 40 acres and a debt. That was the inheritance. 40 acres of Kentucky farmland that needed work and a banknote that needed paying. Frank was 26 years old, just married to Della, with nothing but his father's equipment and his own stubbornness. Stubbornness turned out to be enough. He worked that land with everything he had. Early mornings that started before the sun and evenings that ended after it. He learned what the soil wanted. He failed 2 seasons in a row in the early years and didn't quit. He expanded when he could, buying the adjacent parcels as they became available. 20 acres here, 15 there, patient and methodical the way farming taught you to be. By the time Brian and Patrice were in school, Frank had grown 40 acres into 112. He'd paid off the original debt and built something that actually worked. A real farm, a productive one, the kind his father had dreamed of and Frank had made real through sheer refusal to give up. Della had been beside him every step. She kept the books, raised the kids, ran the house, helped with harvest when the workers were short. People in Millhaven knew Della Gable the way they knew the church steeple. She was simply part of the landscape, permanent and orienting. When she got sick, Frank had kept farming, because she told him to. "Don't you dare stop on my account," she'd said from the hospital bed. And he hadn't, because arguing with Della had never gotten him anywhere. She passed in September, and now in December someone had put a sign in his driveway. His own children, his own land. He sat on the porch until dark and didn't go inside. Brian arrived the next morning. Frank was in the barn when he heard the car. He kept working, checking the equipment, the way he did every December before the ground froze fully, and waited. Brian would find him. Brian always found him eventually. His son appeared in the barn doorway, 49 years old. He'd left Millhaven at 22 and never really come back. Nashville first, then Atlanta, a career in finance that Frank respected without understanding. Brian was a good man. Frank had always believed that. He was reconsidering it somewhat. "Dad, Brian, you took the sign." "I did." Brian stepped inside. He had his hands in his jacket pockets, the posture he'd had since childhood when he was about to say something difficult. "Patrice and I have been talking about the farm, about what makes sense going forward." "Going forward," Frank repeated. "You're alone out here. It's 112 acres. The upkeep alone. I've been keeping it up for 50 years, Brian." "I know, but your mother has been gone 11 weeks. Brian stopped. 11 weeks, Frank said again. Quiet, steady, the way he said everything. And you put a sign in my driveway. Brian looked at the barn floor. We were trying to be practical. Practical. Frank set down the wrench in his hand. You want to know what practical is? Practical is getting up every morning for 51 years and working land that didn't want to cooperate. Practical is not walking away from something because it got hard. He looked at his son. You didn't ask me, Brian. You just decided. Dad, get off my farm, Frank said quietly. Come back when you're ready to have a real conversation. Brian left. Frank went back to work. There was a garden on the south side of the house that Della had kept for 30 years. Frank hadn't touched it since September, hadn't been able to. It was the one part of the farm that was purely hers. Vegetables and flowers mixed together the way she liked, practical and beautiful at the same time, just like her. In December it looked like what it was, a garden in winter, brown and dormant, waiting. Frank started going there in the mornings, not to do anything, just to stand at the edge of it with his coffee and be in a place that was still completely hers. The garden didn't know she was gone. It was just resting the way it always rested in winter, getting ready to come back in spring. He talked to her sometimes. He wasn't embarrassed about it. He told her about the sign. He told her what he'd said to Brian. He told her he thought he'd been right, but he wasn't entirely sure, which was the honest truth. He told her he was cold without her in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. His neighbor Ed came by on a Thursday, 72, had the farm 2 miles east, had known Frank and Della for 40 years. He brought a casserole his wife had made and sat at the kitchen table and didn't try to say anything useful, which was exactly right. Brian put up a sign, Frank told him. Ed looked at his coffee. I heard. From who? Millhaven's a small town, Frank. Frank shrugged. I pulled it out. Good, Ed said simply. They sat in the kitchen for an hour. Ed talked about his own kids, his own land, the particular stubbornness of Kentucky soil in a dry year. Frank listened and felt slightly less alone. When Ed left, he stopped at the door. She loved this farm, Frank, almost as much as she loved you. Frank nodded. I know, he said. That's why I'm keeping it. Patrice called on a Sunday. Frank almost didn't answer, but Patrice was his daughter, and whatever she'd done, he still heard her voice and thought of the girl who used to follow him around the farm at age 5 asking the name of every single thing. Daddy, she still called him that, had never stopped. Patrice, I'm sorry about the sign. No preamble. She'd always been more direct than Brian. It was wrong. We should have talked to you first. Yes, Frank said. You should have. Brian thought. Brian can speak for Brian. What did you think? A pause. I thought you seemed so lost, she said quietly. After Mom, I thought if you didn't have so much to manage you might. She stopped. I thought I was helping. Did you ask me if I needed help? No. Patrice, this farm is the only place I still feel close to your mother. Every acre of it. The barn, the south field, her garden. His voice stayed steady only because he needed it to. You were going to take that from me. He heard her crying on the other end. I didn't think of it that way, she said. I know you didn't, Frank said. That's what I need you to understand. You made a decision about my life without thinking about what my life actually is. She cried quietly for a moment. Frank waited. Can I come home? She asked. Next weekend, just to be there. Help with whatever needs doing. Frank looked out the kitchen window at Della's dormant garden. Come Saturday, he said. I'll put you to work. Patrice almost laughed through her tears. Just like when we were kids. Some things don't change, Frank said. Patrice came Saturday. She drove from Nashville, 4 hours, arrived at 8 in the morning wearing work clothes, which Frank noticed and appreciated. She wasn't coming to talk. She was coming to be useful, which in a farm family was its own language of love. They worked the barn together through the morning. Frank showed her what needed doing and she did it without complaint, the way she had at 15 before Nashville and a career and a life that had taken her elsewhere. She still knew how to work. He'd made sure of that. At lunch they sat at the kitchen table, the same table Frank and Della had sat at for 50 years, and ate the soup Frank had made from the last of Ed's wife's casserole stretched out. Brian called during lunch. Frank put him on speaker. It wasn't a long call. Brian apologized. Genuinely, Frank thought, the real kind that costs something. Frank accepted it. Genuinely, the real kind that doesn't keep a tab. They didn't fix everything in that call. Some things between fathers and sons need more than one conversation, but they started. After lunch, Patrice walked with Frank to Della's garden. They stood at the edge of it together in the December cold. "It'll come back in spring," Patrice said. "Always does," Frank said. "What are you going to plant?" Frank thought about it. "Whatever she had in here last year. I kept her notes." He looked at the dormant rose. She wrote everything down. What went where, what worked, what didn't. Patrice looked at her father. "That sounds like her," she said softly. "It does," Frank agreed. He looked out at his 112 acres. His father's 40 and everything he'd added. The barn, the fields, the farmhouse, the garden resting under the December sky. Nobody was putting a sign in that driveway again. This land held 50 years of his life. It held Della and every inch of it. It held the only version of himself he'd ever been proud of. You don't sell that. You tend it. You protect it. You get up every morning and you keep going because the land needs you and because somewhere in the keeping of it, you find that you still need it too. Frank Gable went inside and put the kettle on. Tomorrow the farm would need him again. He would be ready.